Good evening, everybody. In my part of the world, good morning to those of you in New Zealand. Welcome to the Network Migration Services webinar on Australia this evening. Just a very quick introduction. My name is Andrew Kerr. I'm a licensed immigration advisor for Australia and New Zealand. I am a New Zealander. I lived in New Zealand for plus minus 20 years. And then, like a lot of young New Zealanders did way back then, I moved over to Australia. I spent 10 years plus minus in Australia, and then I came to South Africa in 1990 on a business contract, and I'm still here. So I've actually lived in South Africa longer than I've lived in any of my home country or Australia. I'm very proud to have lived in South Africa for 33 years now. I love this country. Yes, we do have our issues, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's why people are, online tonight, of course, having a little bit of a listen as to how, if you decide to, can you potentially immigrate to Australia. I'm only going to do Australia tonight. We did New Zealand last Wednesday. If you want to find out, of course, when the next webinars are, just log on to our website, networkmigration.com, or drop us an email to me, Andrew, at networkmigration.com. By the way, all our email addresses are at networkmigration.com. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to Ruan earlier in the chat room there. He did put my email address and a link that you can send your CVs to if you want to be assessed. The assessments are free. I'll talk about that in a minute. I wanted to say welcome to, I just noticed Xenia logging on. Xenia is one of our senior consultants in our job search division. She helps you with that all important process of being in the right space to find a job, i.e. CVs, LinkedIn's, et cetera. And also welcome to Liz Fullewen. Liz is our office manager, if you like, or one of our senior managers in our Johannesburg office. I'm sitting at home tonight, working from home, but our office is literally 5 minutes away. We're just past Monte Casino in Joburg. We're just in the Dainfern Gold State area, just outside the estate. So welcome to Liz. Liz is going to be working with her colleague, friend, and sister, who is based in our New Zealand office. So welcome to Desiree Lindeque. Thank you, as always, Des, for joining us this evening. Desiree is our worldwide operations manager. She manages our 20 team members. We've got, I think it's 20 or 21 team members that work for Network Migration in three separate divisions, and Desiree, in conjunction with Liz, manages the team. So welcome to the team tonight. Thank you for logging on, as always. You don't have to, but your genuine support through these processes is mind-blowing, as always. Just want you to notice on the first slide here, my MARA registration number. I'm going to be very open tonight. I'm not going to name names, but if you are sitting in Cape Town, and by the way, if you are sitting in Cape Town, our thoughts and prayers go out to you all. You've had some awful weather down there in the past 4 or 5 days. I've just been watching it on YouTube. Awful weather. I mean, I've never seen Newlands Cricket Ground, for example. It looks like a lake. But there's been some major damage down there to homes. And those of you who are, in Cape Town, please look after yourself. Please stay safe, and please look after each other. Cape Town's going through some pretty lousy weather at the moment. So, in fact, I don't know if you've noticed, but worldwide at the moment, whatever you put it down to, global warming, El Nino, whatever, et cetera, the worldwide weather patterns are certainly changing. And welcome to those of you who are in South Africa and the rest of the world, et cetera. I'm sitting in Joburg. It's a bit chilly today. It hasn't been that cold a winter. We've really been quite blessed, but these last 2 days have been quite cold. But then when you can see it snowing in Upper Western Cape, for example, in places that it's virtually never snowed before, you can understand why it's so cold north of that. Actually, I can see that. Awful weather down there in Cape Town. So our thoughts and prayers go out to you all. I just wanted to make sure you use a MARA registered agent. There's a company in Cape Town, I'm not going to mention their name, who allow non-licensed agents to give you immigration advice. And we're currently in the process of helping 2 of them either get refunds from this company in full or report them to MARA because they shouldn't have been signed up. These particular clients that we're working with at the moment, they're not our clients yet because we're not allowed to take them on while, of course, that's a MARA regulation, while they're working with another agent. But they don't qualify. They don't qualify for Australia. So how on earth can anybody with genuine business acumen sign people up that don't qualify? It's BS, ladies and gentlemen. Be extremely careful. There's another company based up here in Joburg. I'm not going to mention their name, Joburg, Pretoria area, that allows non-licensed agents to give immigration advice. That, for Australia, that's actually not against the rules. For New Zealand, it's way against the rules. But if you have an office in Australia, you have to be a licensed agent if you're going to give immigration advice offshore or onshore. Ironically enough, if you're offshore, and you don't have an office in Australia, you don't have to be licensed. So they get away with it in a way by some of them saying, well, I don't have to be licensed, I don't need to be licensed, etc., etc. If you're dealing with a non-licensed agent at your initial consultation, you can't be fully comfortable with the fact that they know what they're talking about. And listen, this is your life we are talking about here. Yours, your families, your children's if you've got children, etc. This is a step for the rest of your lives if you're going to permanently immigrate to these countries. So you want to make sure you're using the right people. So delve into what the company does. Delve into what you're paying for if you agree to, of course, come on board with that particular company. I know we're the best out there, and I'm obnoxious enough to say it because, you know, we care. We care about you guys as much as you're part of our family. We treat every one of our colleagues as a family. And we treat them like we'd expect to be treated ourselves, with the respect and that is due not only to yourselves, but of course in dealing with businesses and or other agencies. I'm a member of MIA, which is the Migration Institute of Australia, and thank you to some of our service providers, which are on the first page there. We are quite literally the one-stop shop. A few slides to show you tonight. By the way, tonight's going to be quite quick. We're going to be in about another 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm going to get straight to the point very shortly. I just want to show you a few slides. Please feel free to take a screenshot of those slides or take them with your phone. But everybody of the 164 people listening to me tonight, everybody that is logged on will be emailed by Ruan, by my marketing manager. He will be emailing this webinar recording live to everybody tomorrow morning. So you will get a recording of this webinar that you can show family or friends or spouses if they're not around at the moment. Network Migration, as I've said, we've been around 30-odd years, 33 years. We've done over 15,000 families from all over the world, predominantly from Africa, but from all over the world. We've got clients as far away as Canada, China, UK, Ireland. Clearly, a couple of Russian clients at the moment, a couple of Ukrainian clients at the moment with all the turmoil that's going on up there. So there's not a country that you come from that we can't help you with. Now, Maluli, hi Maluli. The questions are going to be answered by Desiree, who's a provisionally licensed agent for New Zealand. And remember, doesn't have to be licensed for Australia, but she actually knows way more about Australia than me, and Liz. So Desiree and or Liz will answer your questions, because if I sort of revert to your questions, I tend to lose my thread. So just type your questions in the chat room, ladies and gentlemen. But if you want an assessment, they're free. The assessments are written assessments. So I give you what we call a pathway to residency based on your circumstances, and I send you 3 documents. The first introduction email is an email that you should just read because it explains what the company does. Then the first attachment, always scroll down. No, not yet, Joe. Sorry, I didn't mean to answer that question. Always scroll down to the 3 attachments. The first attachment is your pathway to residency, how you actually obtain your visa, what steps you need to take, and what those steps cost. And in the first attachment I send you will be all the government fees and the fees required by the relevant authorities at each stage of the application. The second attachment are our service fees, which are separate to the fees in the first attachment. So our service fees to take you as an individual or a family and relocate you to Australia. That's our quotes to do this, which of course you can pay up front and get a discount because your money's held in trust anyway, or you can pay it off. You can pay it off over 4 payments, or you can even discuss payment plans with us. And the third attachment is an assessment form to get the ball rolling, which is basically names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, structures, family, etc. So if you wanted to get the ball rolling, you'd fill in the assessment form, pick a payment plan that suits you, email it back to us. Liz would actually then send you the service agreement based on, of course, the agreed payment plan, and you'd send that back signed, and then Kim, our accountant, she would send you the invoice for the deposit to get the ball rolling, and we are up and running. And we stay with you until you're living in your country of choice, whether that takes 6 months or 6 years. Australia, on average, depending on the visa type, will take somewhere between, for a skilled migration visa, unless you're a teacher or a healthcare worker, you're probably looking at about 12 to 18 months from the day you say, right, let's go. If you're a teacher or a healthcare worker, you're actually processed faster, 3 to 6 months, as opposed to 12 to 18 if you're pretty much any other occupation. Australia visa and points I'm going to go through shortly. Relocation partners. We have 3 divisions within Network Migration. We have my division, which is basically paperwork. Myself, Desiree, and Liz oversee a group of file managers who are, frankly, extremely good at their jobs. They prepare the applications. When you come on board, or if you come on board, within the first week, you receive a documentation checklist. We call that a starter pack, and a login code to our back-end CRM system. So you load your documents into our CRM system, and it automatically notifies your file manager that you've loaded documentation. So we, of course, can work on the documentation that you've loaded. So that's the one division. That division gets you your visas. Okay. The second division, the relocation division, I'll touch on a little bit later, but it's run by Rose Nightingale. Rose is our head of our relocation. So it's things like booking flights, taking pets, furniture, shifting money, opening bank accounts, meeting at airports, arranging accommodation, etc. And then the third division is our job search training and job search marketing division, which is run by Liz Fillion and Xenia van Rooyen. And Liz and Xenia prepare your CVs, do your LinkedIns, and introduce you to the Aussie job market. One of the huge advantages you've got 9 times out of 10, if you're doing a skilled migrant visa to go to Australia, is you've already got the right to work. So you're granted the right to work from your home country. So looking for a job becomes a lot easier, unless, of course, you're looking for a work visa or a sponsored visa, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay. So as I said, we've been around 30 odd years, very well established and registered. That's me a couple of years ago. I don't even know where I was then. Looked like I'm at a gym. I don't think so. Anyway. Now that was me. And Australia. Listen, guys, I love Australia. I lived there 10 years. It's a beautiful country. It's very diverse. It's massively huge. From Perth to Sydney's a 2.5 day drive, flat out. It's 4,000 kilometres. So it's like driving to here and Cape Town and back again, and then halfway back again. It's a long way. So it's a big country. I've lived in Sydney. I've lived in Melbourne. I've lived in Brisbane. I've lived in Perth. Extremely different cities. But all lovely in their own way. It's just a stunningly beautiful country. Joe, I'm sure the team will answer now. Okay, right. So I love Australia, as I've just mentioned to you. Right, Australia visa and points I'm going to go through shortly, but let's just touch on the types of visas that we do. And in fact, it's all of them. There's not a visa we can't do for Australia. Skilled migrant is what we're going to concentrate on tonight in the next 10 minutes. Concentrating on skilled migrant, but clearly if you want to study in Australia, we can do a student visa, family visas if you're being sponsored by a family member, maybe you're being sponsored by a parent. You can be sponsored by, on a skilled migrant application, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your son, your daughter, your uncle, your aunt, your niece or your nephew, or your first cousin. And that actually depends on where they live. If they live in Melbourne or Sydney, they cannot sponsor you. But if they live elsewhere, they can sponsor you. I wouldn't do a skilled migrant family-sponsored visa because the processing time is extremely long. You're looking at probably somewhere between 4 to 7 years for that visa to be granted. So we don't really touch on 491 family visas. I'll talk about them in a minute. Work visas, of course, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, so let's not touch on them now. Visitors visas, no problem. Going on a holiday. You wouldn't really go to Australia to job hunt because the process... If you fly to Australia and get a job and the company is not already pre-approved to sponsor you, the process will take 4 to 6 months and you won't be allowed to stay in Australia that long. Not on a visitor's visa for holiday purposes anyway. So, but, general visitors visas are key. Spousal visas, you might be going out or in a relationship with an Australian citizen or permanent resident. Clearly that would be a spousal visa. Parent visas, you would need to have an equal or greater amount of your children living in Australia at the time that you apply. So if you've got 2 children, clearly one of them needs to be living there. If you've got 3 children, 2 of them need to be living there. If you've got 4 children, 2 of them need to be living there. If you've got 5 children, 3 of them need to be living there, or 2 there and 1 in another country. That is a resident. It's a little bit complicated. It's called the balance of family test, but that child would need to be in Australia for a minimum period of 2 years. In other words, be an Australian resident for 2 years in order to be eligible to sponsor the parent. So contact me if you're a parent wanting to go and join your children. Processing times are quite long, and it's quite an expensive visa on that one. Permanent residency visa, of course, that can be acquired after your work visa, for example, but if you're going on a skilled migrant visa, then it's permanent residency anyway. Visitors visas, but if you're going as a tourist, your visitors visa will take anywhere from 1 day to 3 weeks to process. If you've been there before and you've worked within your parameters and you haven't overstayed and whatever, your visa it's electronic, so it really should be really quick, within 2 or 3 days. But if you've never been there before, or perhaps you come from a slightly higher risk country that they deem a higher risk country, most of those are in Africa, by the way, then you might need to supply them with a little bit more information for your visitor's visa if you're going on a genuine holiday. Work visas, I've already touched on there. Sorry, that should say 482. I don't know why it says 462. My apologies. I don't know why it should say that. Anyway, unless I'm wrong, Liz or Des. But anyway, excuse me. This is a working holiday visa. My apologies. So if you're in Africa, forget this visa. You can't do it. It's only for certain countries like UK, Ireland, America, Canada, Brazil, Portugal, Spain. Quite a few countries. If you're between 18 to 30, 31. You can do a working holiday visa, which is called a subclass 462. So if you hold a foreign passport from those countries, let me know, and clearly you need to be under 31 years old. Student visas, subclass 500, we do them all the time. There must be 30 universities in Australia, if not more, and at least 50 technical institutions. So student industry in Australia is massive. It's $8 billion a year it brings into the government. It's actually the second biggest income in Australia is student visas. So it's big time. But do remember, if you're going in on a student visa, you do need to show sufficient funds. You are allowed to work for 40 hours a fortnight or 20 hours a week. You can't work full time. That's all you're allowed to work. You must, of course, be in a position to not only show immigration you've got sufficient funds to study, i.e. you've paid for your courses, at least annually if you've paid them a year in advance, or you've paid for the course at least, and or you've got sufficient funds to live there as well. So it's quite a complicated visa to do, a student visa, but clearly we do them all the time. Australian skills assessment. Right, now let's start just talking about the skilled migrant visa. I'm sure somebody's going to answer you, Michael, but basically teachers are fast-tracked at the moment. Anyway, so when you're going into Australia using your skill set, 99% of the time you need to have a tertiary qualification or a post-matric or post-secondary school qualification. That could be a trade, could be a 3-year diploma, could be a degree, could, of course, be, well, pretty much what I've just said, honours, masters, PhDs, etc. You might be sitting there saying, well, I'm an accountant for the last 15 years, but I don't have a degree. Then you'll never get into Australia because you won't get a positive skills assessment, because that is an occupation that would require you to have the qualification. There are over 30 assessing authorities in Australia. And step 1 is, in conjunction with your English test, you need to get your qualifications assessed. Some of your assessing authorities require the English test up front, like if you're an engineer or a teacher or an accountant or most financial people. You're required to sit the English test first and then send your English test results with your assessing authority documentation to the relevant assessing authority. Okay? Now, we do all of this for you. We don't set your English test for you, clearly, but you've got to do that yourself. But we do the skills assessments for you. A lot of agents out there don't. They just give you the link to go and do it on your own, and then you've got to do it on your own. Well, we feel what What are you paying the agent for if they're not going to hold your hand through the whole process and, of course, do as much of the process as they physically can? So we will do your skills assessments for you, okay? And as I said, in the pathway I send you, I'll let you know what that skills assessment costs. They range on average from $500 to $2,000. It's a bit more if you're a tradesman because you've got to do technical interviews and or practical, depending on what your trade is. But so they're ranging from $5,000 to $2,000 on average. But I'll put that in the email I'm sending you. So when you send me your CVs, by the way, I need to know your ages for Australia. I need to know your specific age. So if it's not on your CV, please do a separate line. I'm 42, my wife's 38, and we've got a 10 and an 8-year-old child. I need to know your ages specifically for Australia. All right. I don't necessarily need to know them for New Zealand, but I do for Australia. So please include your ages. Okay. But anyway, so you get your skills assessment done, and the skills assessments range from 4 weeks to 24 weeks. So from 1 month to 6 months, depending on which assessing authority you're using, okay? Because you're in a processing queue. And what we do is we prepare the application, and then we contact you. We allow you to check the application, of course, to make sure we've got all the dates right and everything right. And then once you've given us the green light, only then do we ask you for the assessing authority fee, which, as I said, is between $500 and $2,000. You pay that fee, and then bang, we submit it. Okay? And then you're going to be applying for, remember we're talking about skilled migrant right this second, you're going to be applying for one or all of 3 specific visa subclasses, okay? Mandatory for 189s, 190s, and 491s. Now, as of the 1st of July, which is 10 days ago, that is the start of Australia's tax year. That is when they reboot their entire immigration system. Now, since COVID hit and since lockdowns have been lifted, Australia only selected once, other than state selections. They only selected once from the main skills list, the subclass 189 list. It's called the Medium and Long-Term Strategic Skills Shortage List. I've never counted how many occupations are on that list. I must count them one day, but it's about, I don't know, about 120 occupations on that specific list, might be more. But if you're on that list, you can apply for a 189 visa. Now, the next financial year started 10 days ago. Australia's only issuing 8,500 of those visas. And if you're a family of 5, you take 5 spots. Okay? But a 189 is what we call a blue chip visa. No, Uwe, they're not. You're on the list, but you're not on a priority list. But you're on the 189 list as a university lecturer. Sorry, ladies, I know you would have answered that. Anyway, so a 189, as I said, takes 12 to 18 months to get, and then it's blue chip. You've got 5 years to take it up. If you're not going to take it up in the first year, you must validate it in the first year. So if you're not going to immigrate in the first year, everybody that was on that application must enter Australia in the first year to validate the visa. And then you've got 4 more years to go back there. So you've got 5 years to take it up on a 189, and you can live anywhere in Australia and do anything you want. That's why I call it the blue chip visa. A subclass 190, you also get the 5-year window once it's granted, but it's state nominated. And there are 8 states and territories in Australia, and the states have been allocated 55,000 spots in the next 12 months. So what DHA, Department of Home Affairs Australia, is trying to do is basically say to you, please try and populate the less populated cities, which clearly wouldn't be Sydney, wouldn't be Melbourne. It would be cities like Perth and Adelaide and Darwin and et cetera, and smaller cities, because there's lots of small cities in Australia or small towns. But that's a 190. You're nominated by the state. You get 5 bonus points. I'll show you the points in a minute. But you're nominated by the state, which means you sign a declaration that says you are happy to live and work in that sponsoring state for 2 years. Still free schooling and healthcare, but technically you are supposed to live in the sponsoring state for 2 years. Okay? And then, of course, you've got the 491. Now, the 491 is a visa that came out in 2019 in November. And it was designed, it's called an RSMS visa, Regional Skilled Migration. Regional is designated by postcodes. But basically, the easiest way to explain this is when you're granted the 491, and by the way, you get 15 bonus points for a 491. It's issued to you for 5 years. You still get free schooling and healthcare, but you've only got 1 year to go. You've got to enter the country within the first year. And for the 3 consecutive years after that, the main applicant must earn $71,000 a year. That shouldn't be a problem in Australia at all. That's actually quite a low salary in Australia. But for those 3 years, remember it's a regional visa, you can live anywhere except Sydney City, Melbourne City, and Brisbane City. So in other words, you can live in Queensland, you just can't live or work in Brisbane. Same in New South Wales, you just can't live or work in Sydney. And the same in Victoria, you just can't live or work in Melbourne on a 491 visa. So be aware of that. But they are allocating lots of them this year. But the issue is, ladies and gentlemen, you need to be ready. I can't remember when it was, Des will remember, but it was 5 or 6 years ago. And Queensland opened their state at night for nominations at 9 a.m. in the morning, Australia time. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd shut it. They closed it because that's how many applications. They had something like 4,000 applications in 8 hours. Because clearly everybody in the world is sitting there waiting to see their occupation come up on the state list and then, of course, submit. And you've got to be ready to submit. So our file managers monitor the states on your behalf. And as and when you pop up on the state, we contact you immediately and ask whether you want us to submit. It's usually somewhere between $300 and $350 once you're accepted by the state to submit an application to them. And then we submit because we want to be first in, first served, because that's what it is. It's first in, first served. Okay. And of course, we will then prepare the state nominations for you and submit the relevant applications to the state. And then there was also a 491 family visa. The one I meant, you still get 15 points, but that's the one I wouldn't touch because the processing time is between 4 to 8 years. Right. Here are your points indicators. Please take a screenshot of this. The minimum points for submission is 65. You'll notice your top left here, your points for your age. Your cutoff age for Australia on a skilled migrant application is 45 years old. I know that's actually really young. New Zealand cutoff age is 56. So if you're 45 or over, you do not qualify for a skilled migrant visa into Australia, irrelevant of your skill sets. So you can't do this visa if you're 45 years old or over. Okay. Competent English, proficient or superior. There are your points. There are 4 English tests you can do. Some of the assessing authority don't accept all 4, so be careful. Clearly get some advice from a licensed agent like myself as to which assessing authority you would use. Clearly, I'll be sending it to you anyway. Which English test you can do. And by the way, once I've assessed you, if you want to have a consult, they're free. I don't charge. I consult Mondays to Saturdays. Either face-to-face in our offices up the road here in Joburg, or we can do Zoom, Skype, Teams, or Google Meet. Up to you. Okay? And then you get an English language. You might be sitting in London at the moment thinking, well, I'm a British citizen. I have to sit the English test. You're quite right. You don't. There are certain countries that are exempt from the English test. But if you don't accept the test, you don't get the points. And you just might need the points to be selected. So even if you come from an exempt country, you might still need to sit the English test. Then you can see your points for qualifications at the top right there. There are only 2 assessing authorities that don't necessarily require a qualification. One is the Australian Computer Society. So if you're IT based, you could possibly be accepted if you don't have a degree or a diploma. I'd need to see your detailed CV. And the other one is called IML, the Institute of Management and Leadership. So you'd need to be a senior corporate manager to be positively assessed by Institute of Management and Leadership. Now, when you get assessed by ACS or IML, because you don't have the qualifications, you can't claim the points. So they might give you a positive assessment, but you can't claim the points. Okay. And then points for work experience, as you can see there, 3 out of 5, 5 out of 8, 8 out of 10. Those points need to be, the work experience needs to be related to the skill you're claiming or the ANSCO code. ANSCO stands for Australia, New Zealand Standard Classification of Your Occupation. Okay, ANSCO. So it has to be related to an ANSCO code. I'll be sending you your ANSCO codes on your assessments. And then you'll notice if your spouse sits the English test and gets moderate or competent, you can claim 5 points for that. And if your spouse has a qualification, I've just paused. No, there we are. We're back. Okay. If your spouse has a qualification that's on the same skills list as you, you can claim an extra 5 points. The other skills list, by the way, you've got the medium and long-term list, but the other one is called the STSOL, the State Territory Skilled Occupations List. So you might be an accountant on the main list, but your partner's a graphic designer and are on the STSOL list. You can't claim your partner's qualifications because your partner's qualifications are not on the same list as you. Okay, you can claim English, but not the qualifications unless you're both on the same list. Uwe, if I'm understanding, I was just giving you an example of how quickly the state filled up. Okay, so when we do a state nomination, we're literally ready to submit your application. So we contact you and we say, you're a chemical engineer, you've come out on Queensland's list. Do you want us to submit an application to Queensland? You would then say, yes, we'd submit the application. And then that's when they charge the $300 or $350 is when they select you, okay, for the submission. And when they select you, because the state has selected you, when the main DHA, the Skill Select site, it's all computerized. So that will pick up that the state has selected you. So DHA will then select you and it sends you an ITA or an invitation to apply for the main visa, the 190 visa. So you're still going to go through the main Adelaide processing centre, but the state has nominated you. And we're using that state nomination to show Adelaide, hey, Queensland have picked me. Please process my application. I hope that explained it. Okay. If not, just arrange a meeting, mate. Just arrange a meeting with me, Zoom, Skype, Teams, Google Meet, or drop me a personal email. All right. Now, just take screenshots of the second slide, please. If you're a single applicant, in other words, you don't have a partner, you might have children, but you don't have a partner or a spouse, then you can claim an extra 10 points. I don't know why, but they brought that in a few years ago. And I mentioned the points for state territory nomination on a 190 earlier. That's 5. Sponsored by an Australian eligible citizen is 15, or resident, of course, and sponsored by the state is also 15. I've already talked about them. And then, of course, if you've studied in Australia, you can get an extra 10 points depending on the qualifications you've got. Okay. Relocation. It's part of our services. Oh, thanks, Des. Yeah, sorry, Des, I didn't mention the ROI, the registration of interest, because some of the states do, some of the states don't. So as Desiree's explaining there to you, everyone, some of the states are now switching. In fact, I think all of them will, by the way, to registering interest to be selected by the state, and then you can sort of sit there, and then they'll select you as and when they want to, generally. But yeah, Desiree's explained it really well there. So relocation, things like car rentals, pre-departures, country information, meet and greet at airports, accommodation, schooling options, etc., etc. And, of course, job hunting. Where's our job hunting video? There. Sorry, I went past that one. Australia Job Search Training and CV Writing. We've got our own recruitment company, NMS Recruiter. So we will assist you with finding work. Now, don't contact me tomorrow and say, right, get me a job in Australia. All right? That's not what we do here. All right? Will we help you get a job? Of course we will. But I can't guarantee you a job. You're the one that has to sit in the interviews, remember? All right? So what we do is we prep you for it. But getting a job in Australia, I've been doing this for 33 years. I've never had anybody struggle to get a job in Australia because remember, 99% of you are landing with the right to work, which means you could go and work on the local burger bar if you want to. All right? Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm pretty much finished. There was ending up with about 170 odd people listening to me tonight. Just a thank you again to Ruan for setting it up. Thank you to Desiree. I hope you're warm. Please go out and buy that heater, Desiree, for your little office. I hope you're warm in New Zealand. Liz, thank you. As always, Xenia, for joining us tonight. But ladies and gentlemen, whether you use Network Migration Service or not is frankly irrelevant. All right, I'd love you to use us. We'd be honoured to assist you. We take this, as I said earlier, extremely seriously. This is your life we're talking about here. We make you part of our family. But whether you use us or not, at least find out how to go about it and what are the do's or don'ts. I'm flabbergasted sometimes at what I hear people have been told by other organisations. Make sure that that initial contact is with a MARA registered agent. And I am, and you can check that on the website, the MARA website. But because then you've got recourse. If we give you the wrong advice and you've paid something to us, we've done wrong. We'd have to refund you. I mean, otherwise you'd report us. And we have to get licensed every year. New Zealand's mandatory since 2009, and I've been for the last 14 years, I've been licensed for both countries. I don't have to be licensed for Australia, but I choose to be because it creates credibility. As I said earlier, these two poor people that paid this company in Cape Town to do the work for them, and they literally don't qualify, it just disgusts us. It makes us sick, because what are these people actually doing? All right, what they do is they bring in youngsters, they put them on commission, and they tell them to go out there and get contracts. All right, well, that's not the way anyone should work. Okay, you need to know the full facts before you decide who you're going to use. You're going to shop around, of course you are, but make sure that once you've done your shopping, you understand what you're paying for, what you're getting for that money you're paying, what the services are they actually offer, which is all the same thing I've just said, but understand that, yes, you do qualify, all right, and the likelihood of success is such and such. Okay, get all that information before you pay somebody a dime. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to log off now. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Those of you in Cape Town, prayers and thoughts as always. Des, have a great day in New Zealand as always. Please give our regards to Sonica. And thanks, Ruan. Thanks, Liz. And thanks, Enia, as always. You're part of an awesome team of people, and I'll see you all tomorrow. And those of you who want an assessment, contact me tomorrow, andrew@networkmigration.com. Ring the office, go to our website, fill in a free assessment form, or make an appointment to come and see me or have a virtual meeting. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day and or evening. Ciao.